think it's so long. I generally don't have any proper concept of time. I was scrolling back through my contacts to find the interview, and I think it was 2019 or something.
Yeah, that
I was
sounds
like,
right.
oh, okay, it didn't really seem like it was that long since we spoke.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah,
These
and
last
so
few
much
years
has
have
happened in
flown.
between.
Mm-hmm.
For you especially, you're now Papa Hoover, right?
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's you have just one child, right? It's
Yep.
you have a boy.
Yep.
Yeah. How old?
He is almost 11 months.
Wow. Okay. You're still in that. Wow. You're still in that sort of bent over in half, supporting his arms,
Mm-hmm.
breaking your back phase, which is it's an awesome phase. It's like
Yeah. Well,
it's a
he definitely breaks backs. He's quite a big guy.
oh wow. Wow. That I was just gonna say that was one of the few times in my life I was kind of glad I wasn't a tall person. You know, it's like that's cool. Okay, this is not so much of a bend. See them 6 foot, 6.5 dads, twisted over the nursery. So you know, I love that side of things. I think having a family is amazing. It's the best thing anybody can do. But there are some pulls, on your time and on your life as far as chasing the cryptid dream go. And it would be interesting to know from your perspective what those pulls, if any, might have been. Or what is the struggle, especially with energy levels? I assume your work as well. How do you cope with that now?
It's taken some getting used to. I mean, obviously we haven't done much in about 2 years because of pregnancy and then now kid.
Mm.
But now that he is at a manageable age where it's one of us either I or my fiance can kind of handle him on our own, things are easier.
Yeah.
So I will be after first of the year kind of back into semi full-time, hopefully more so full-time cryptid investigating.
Wow. And what's the plan? Who have you got in your sights? Which cryptid is first for the conquest?
It's too many.
In North America,
It's hard.
especially, you guys are spoiled for choice.
Yeah, I mean we've got a list that we're kind of compiling. We definitely have ones that we want to go after more than others. And I think the last meeting we had, I think we were kind of leaning towards kind of starting with like a skunk ape, go down to Florida and
Wow.
fight gators again. And yeah, we want to get back abroad again now that everything's kind of opening up again. And
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many places to visit in that sense. I was wondering about Florida because you guys, you did. I remember seeing in one of your clips the big barge, the big old style, um, sort of swamp barge floating through. Was that through the Everglades or was that more in Louisiana?
that was Louisiana.
Was that for the Loup-Garou or something else?
Yeah, Rougarou.
Tell me about that. That's always fascinated me because, and this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about today, actually. There's a whole cryptid crossover sometimes, one with folklore and legend, and with creatures that may or may not exist with modern sightings. But in North America, there's a double or even a triple with a Loup-Garou aspect to that, whereas there's a European transplant of the legend into the area. There's a Native American legend of the creature, and also a modern, conception and perspective of that. How do you pull those elements apart to see what the real creature may be?
It's really tough sometimes. I mean, like, there's ones where when you're researching them, it's very much like, okay, it's no matter what thread you pull on, it's more folkloric, and that was kind of the case with Pukwudgies and some of the stuff that we've investigated in Europe. And then but then on the other hand, you get the ones where it's like, no matter what, same analogy, no matter what thread you pull on, it's this is out of anything more possible and plausible to exist physically as
Mm.
a, you know, flesh and blood animal. Rougarou was a tough one. I know with both Rougarou and Pukwudgie, those were both ones that kind of rooted themselves more on that folkloric side. Pukwudgie is, you know, more so specifically.
Mm.
I mean, Rougarou is an interesting one. I mean, it follows kind of in line with a lot of the, you know, the kind of dogman phenomena, but has more of that supernatural kind of feel to it and vibe to it. And, you know, the stories go way farther back than a lot of the kind of classic dogman stuff. And it is a lot more rooted in that superstition, you know, folklore side. You
Is
know,
it like a
there's
regional skinwalker of a type, or not really?
kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it seems like it takes the same form, but yeah, from what we kind of gathered both in like the with the guy we interviewed and then
Mm.
just kind of general research, it seems like it, you know, it is like that physical manifestation of guilt where it, you know, it just kind of like looms over you, but it's always kind of,
Mm.
it seems to always take the form of some sort of large canine,
Wow.
versus Skinwalker where it can be kind of anything, you know, really. I mean, obviously that stuff is kind of, you kind of hear more so as a wolf or a coyote, but
Oh, but it can be anything essentially. The
yeah.
skinwalker, can't it? Yeah, I remember that. That was interesting to me actually, and I wondered if a lot of the canine interpretations were more of our own, you know, in the modern sense for that particular creature. Even if you watch something like Skinwalker Ranch, I'm yet to quite figure out where the Skinwalker is, you know, like
Yeah, I
it's a
think
weird. It's more like a synonym for strange goings on, or
yeah, I
something
feel
like
like,
that.
in the case of Skinwalker Ranch, that's just kind of the, I know they always talk about how there are a lot of Native American skinwalker stories in that region. That's kind of why
Hmm.
it just was
Ah,
like, this
that's the
area is
name. Yeah.
surrounded by several different stories of this, so let's just call it this. Like, but yet, from I've watched the show and I've never really seen anything that's really like Skinwalker esque
Yeah.
in what you
Yeah.
would think about when you think of the
Yeah, like
Skinwalker.
this big hulking
Yeah.
transformative beast. In fact, that whole thing, like I did a little deep dive in one of the books about that, and it was about why we choose these wolf-like creatures to represent this animalistic change. You know, this either in the old times, there's a story, isn't there, of King Lycon um, in um, in Greece, and he's basically changed into a wolf when he attempts to feed the entrails of his son, I think, to Zeus to fool the god into eating human flesh. He's transformed into a wolf for 9 years as punishment. Or there's another story of I forget the very details of it now, but after a similar ritual sacrifice of a young child and eating the flesh, one of the characters also turns into a wolf for 9 years. And I wonder, is there something sort of ritualistic and sacrificial in our past, in many cultures, in fact, where we've seen these terrible deeds as resulting in this sort of punishment or this transformation of the individual that carries them out. And there was a thing I was looking at, the Weir hyena in Ethiopia, or the hyena man, and they have similar stories there, except for there it's a hyena-like creature that can turn into a person also and disguise itself as a person. It's all wrapped up in all sort of prejudices against Jews and other things and blacksmiths in that country. But you know, there's that rooted mystery there again. But it's not a wolf because they don't have wolves. It's a hyena because that's their local savage beast. And it was like a strange correlation between that. And I'm thinking, well, if we're still seeing things, why does it have a regional variation with a representative creature that's not a wolf, you know, in Africa? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's, I mean, it is really interesting that, you know, a lot of these cultures almost do have a werewolf legend, you know, and I mean, yeah, I feel like it's, you know, the wolves are, you know, wolves or hyenas, you know, any sort of, you know, kind
Mm.
of apex predator creature is kind of usually like, that's kind of what these cultures were always kind of fighting against, always had to watch out for.
Mm.
So I feel like it almost became almost just like that boogeyman story where it's like, don't do this, otherwise you're going to become one of these things, and then we're going to have to, kind of defend ourselves, like, from you, or we're going to have to hunt you, or, kind of whatever. You just become this animalistic, predator, no longer human, only, one goal in mind, and that's to kill, kind of the thing. And
kind of betraying the moral code of the community and things like that, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's very. I find it fascinating because, I know people, Nash, who definitely say that they have seen something that resembles a werewolf, or a large wolf-like upright creature of sorts. And of course, some stories are a bit more far out than others, but there's a few individuals who I wholeheartedly, 100% believe, and yet I can't kind of justify in my mind what they might have seen. I remember, and I included it in something recently, the Lauren Coleman theory about the giant monkey. A giant species of monkey like the Isnachi or the Cardan or the Salvaje, that's 5 to 6 feet tall and has this baboon or dog-like appearance in some way. Could that be a valid? I mean, I thought it was a great theory actually they put forward there, and it's not very popular. Could that be a valid explanation for, what we might have called werewolves, or what the First Nations people might have mistaken for skinwalkers or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the Dogman stuff is getting really pretty crazy lately. I mean, I take a lot of it with a grain of salt just because it seems almost too far-fetched. But yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat with you, where it's like I do know some people that, I wholeheartedly believe, I know them, I trust them, and they have seen some things that they would describe as a large canine upright. So yeah, I think Dogman stuff kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of Bigfoot stuff, where it's you kind of have to really sift through a lot of the nonsense that the internet has unfortunately brought
it's
forth.
like a genre as well as a phenomenon. It's also a genre and has a fan base.
It's the new in thing. It's it's the new fad, cryptid.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. No, I'm with you. It is in, and that's always troubling for researchers because desire for something to manifest can have strong effects on various personalities. And I have met people that are unaware that they are lying when they're lying. That's how sort of taken in psychosis, but whatever the syndrome is that they're having, like there's some attention seeking or affirming issue, and it's kind of scary to watch in a way when somebody's lying, and yet they believe it at the time. It's a strange thing. And of course, we're in that genre where it's a big ask to ask anybody to believe that there could possibly be even a Bigfoot. That's one big giant ask, and then we want to stick a dogman on top of that and something else, and yet this is the kind of pantheon of things we're looking for. Let's look at a few other things that you guys have been searching for. I love lake monsters, and you guys have done some lake monster research, and not in like super well-known lake monster hotspots either, not like Champlain or Lake Okanagan. You've gone sort of a bit more left field there. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, we here in Minnesota, we have our own kind of regional Nessie, and so we've done, I personally have done a ton of research on this. I've been out to I only live like an hour from the lake, so I get out. I haven't been out there as much lately as I would like, but I used to go out there at least once a month, and just kind of see what I could see. And we did have, when we shot our Chasing Legends episode out there back in 2014, we did have some form of sighting, something that kind of stood out as that was similar to eyewitness reports to us. It was a kind of just out of place wake that just kind of appeared, looked like it was moving, and then eventually disappeared. and then all the times I've been out there since, I've yet to see anything similar. So I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been just kind of an an unusual wave pattern. It could have been something. It's tough to tell. Lake Pepin, unfortunately, is not very deep. So the
What
idea that
depth, do you know?
it changes all the time because it's a part of the Mississippi River.
Okay,
So
so
there's a
it's
lot of there's a lot of silt
mm,
buildup, and so there's the depth is always kind of evolving. But I
okay.
want to say at the time the deepest point was maybe 80 feet.
Still
So not
reasonable.
not it's no Loch Ness by any
No.
measure, but it's
No.
it's deep enough where something big could potentially live. But I mean that's one kind of area in this
Mm,
lake that is similar in size geographically to Loch Ness. It's 23 miles long and like a mile
okay.
and a half wide.
And it
So
connects to the Mississippi River. It has an
yep,
outlet.
yeah. So it's almost it's like the river. It's basically the Mississippi River, but it widens out enough where they can classify it as a lake, I guess.
Yeah. But I
Um,
mean, and is there via the Mississippi River, could it eventually make its way out to the sea? Is that a possibility?
um, that
Or
was
are there
one
too
theory
many
that
impediments?
Chad Lewis had brought up, was that it if it is something, it could have been something that worked its way up, and
Mm.
then as over time, as like the dams got put in along the Mississippi, it got trapped, and then
Uh,
it was just kind of stuck there. Um, but like I said, like the 80-foot the
mm,
area of the lake where it's 80 feet is like one small portion of this lake. The average depth is maybe 30 feet.
okay.
So
Okay.
it's shallow enough where should be more sightings if it
Sightings.
is what people kind of claim they're seeing, which is
Okay.
like that classic kind of like neck and hump.
Are
Um,
there so sorry to because I'm so curious about these things. Are there adjoining lakes to it and adjoining rivers? I mean, are there places that could be when it's not there? So it could definitely go to the Mississippi River, which is huge, right? And at a reasonable depth throughout. Are there sort of stop-offs and locales where this creature could spend part of the year? Is what I'm wondering.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple little offshoots, farther south more. And I know Chad Lewis has also proposed that there could be, caves or whatever. I mean, it's they call it the Muddy Mississippi for a river. Like you cannot see. It's
Okay.
once you get in a little bit, it's just black. There's just so much sediment and mud and everything. Like it's not clean by any
Okay.
means. So I mean, you could. I mean, something could easily hide and not be seen and swim right by you, and you would never know as long as it was deep enough where it wouldn't disturb the surface. Um, but
I
like
think
I
I mean that
said,
sounds
if it
yeah.
is something that would need to surface for air, you would see
And
more.
this is the rub always, isn't it? You know, the air thing. You might remember Scott Mardis, who passed away last year.
Mhm.
He proposed cloacal bursae similar to that of the Hawkesbury River turtle and other turtles, where oxygen is actually because apparently it has a different similar the places or like animal for example has a similar structure there to a turtle. So he proposed, is this a possibility? Are we looking at creatures that can stay submerged for days at a time and
Yeah,
then it can aspirate, can gain oxygen directly from water and occasionally then come up to take a little breath. At least in Loch Ness, that kind of made sense. Although it's so choppy there, and the waves move so weirdly at the loch that something just popped its head up slightly for a little breather now and again. You'd never notice anyway.
yeah.
Is it like that? At Lake Pepin, is it quite? Is the water quite choppy and rough, or is it quite a
Yeah,
smooth?
I've never been out there, and it hasn't been, it's never still.
Okay,
It's,
okay,
I mean, it's like it's part of Mississippi, so there's a constant
okay,
current ripping right through that thing, and there's a lot of undercurrents, and
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's totally possible that, I mean, and if you're, I mean, this is like a tourist destination. Like people
Mm,
go out there all the time and boat and stuff like that. So if you're not looking for it, you're not gonna, you're
mm,
not gonna think to see anything. I mean, and And I've talked to some people out there that are, pretty prominent members of the community that have claimed to see it, and I've talked to some people that, are pretty well versed in like the fish species that live out there. And, I did hear someone say that, that it's possible that there's sturgeon in the lake and there's gar in the lake, which are kind of your classic, misidentification cases when it comes to lake monsters. But that can't count for everything, because there's some good photographic evidence that I look at and I'm like, that's no way a sturgeon. Like, there's no way in hell that that's a fish.
Are they humped photos or head and neck photos as well?
Oh, yeah.
Or, wow. I mean, this is the thing, time and time again. And I know it's not a popular theory about lake monsters, that they're prehistoric survivors of some kind, but for the large amount of lake monster sightings anyway, not all of them, I just can't think of anything that fits better. When you get this head and neck sort of action coming out, what else could really fit that? I remember somebody here with Loch Ness told me, and there was a theory that it was a giant mud skipper with a plesiosaur head and neck shaped lure on its head. And my first question was, well, if the lure is that big, how big are the fish it's trying to catch?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is insane. This is like an alternative explanation for the sake of escaping that prehistoric survivor explanation. It sounds incredulous. Why would you even think that, other than we can't possibly allow it to be this prehistoric survivor? And it's not a popular opinion, I know that. But what are your thoughts? What do you think it could be? What creature matches up with those types of dimensions?
I want to say, that every, almost every lake creature in the world is probably something different. It's possible that it could be similar. When it comes to like Lake Champlain, I'm definitely on like the giant turtle team. Just from being out there and just talking to people and seeing some of the video footage and the photo footage and the photo evidence and stuff like that, where it's like this, this seems like that could be kind of what it is.
That's interesting.
Been able to, I mean, obviously we're talking about, Lake Champlain versus Lake Pepin, which, Champlain is known to be, 420 feet deep, and that's the known depth. I mean, and then you take into account the literal mountain range in the middle of the lake that has never been explored and could have caves and
it's about 114 feet long or something. It's 114 miles, sorry, long. Is that what I think? Or is it 120, something like that? I mean,
it's in 120 feet, or 125 miles, or 120 miles long. Something like that.
14
and it starts up in Quebec
at one
and
point,
goes.
Yeah.
It's massive. Like
it's huge.
It's huge. So yeah, I mean, I definitely, and then there's tons of there's a few different river systems that flow in and out of the lake. It has like the perfect habitat. I mean, obviously it gets cold up there, but it has the perfect habitat where something could live and live happily and not get disturbed very often. When it comes to Pepin, I have no idea. I mean, it could be a large turtle, but it gets really cold here. And I've been out on Pepin in January, and it's completely frozen over, and you can walk across it. Like,
wow.
So if whatever it is, it obviously is well versed with the cold and either hibernates or exists under the ice, which then in case it's obviously nothing that would need to come up for air if it.
That's interesting. It's interesting
able to survive without breaking through the ice. I mean, and the ice gets thick out there too. Like, I mean, it's
maybe
there were people driving their vehicles across the lake at one time when I was up there, like middle of it. Yeah.
I mean, we don't think about things like that over here. I think you do have turtles in Lake Pepin, though, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Do they hibernate, or do they go into torpor if they're stuck into the? That would interest me. Do they dig into the banks and hibernate, or are they go into a state of torpor during that time, like some animals do?
Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely sure. I'm a big fan of turtles, but I guess I haven't really looked into their how they hibernate and such. But
no, sure. I mean, I know that some of the alligators do it, don't they? A bit further up north.
Yeah, they stick their up
yeah.
and then it freezes over, and yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's a similar thing going on there, and if that itself is a key to the creature's survival as well. Again, if they've got some similarities to turtles or whatever the thing is within that family or a similar type. To me, it's fascinating because more than Dogman and other things, maybe not as much as Bigfoot, but or maybe equally, witnesses who see these types of creatures are sort of very random. They don't generally tend to be people who are out there looking for it. They're just random witnesses. It's the same with most lake monsters, perhaps not Loch Ness, where people are really going to find something. But usually it's a surprising encounter. They're not really sure of what they're seeing. The descriptions tend to
I
correlate
mean,
really well.
if it's not a mainstream thing, like Loch Ness is like, you go to Loch
Yeah.
Ness, you're like, oh hell yeah, like we're gonna see this monster. But it's like, we talk to people out at Lake Champlain that, I mean, a lot of businesses around the lake, they kind of advertise it, like, they make it a part of it. But like, if you don't know anything about cryptozoology, you've never heard of Champ, you see these things and you're just gonna think, okay, whatever, like you're just gonna laugh
Yeah.
at it. But then you see something and it's like, oh, okay, obviously
Yeah.
these signs and these paintings obviously were meant to something, because obviously there's something strange here. But it's like one thing with like Champlain is like we talk to people that they know that lake like the back of their hand. They know everything that's in it. They know everything below it. They know everything above it. And then they see something that shouldn't be there. It's like those are the people that I believe, because they've seen something that they've never seen before, and they've seen everything. So it's like, okay, that we have to take this. We have to take this seriously.
Yeah.
It's
What
the
are
same
those
thing. I mean,
guys
you're gonna get those.
misidentifying? Yeah, they know the lake
You're
inside
gonna get
out.
you're gonna get those. I mean, you're gonna get those type of people with any sort of lake creature, and then those are the people you need to find, because these are the they said there's the one with Pepin where there was one guy that has refused to do any sort of public interviews. You go in, if you know about him, and you go in. I found this guy literally from talking. It was like a basically talking for one person. They're like, oh, talk to this person, and then that was and then I found this guy, and this is the guy that took like the photo that's like the really good Peppy photo. And he's like, he's like, yeah, he's like, it's like I know it's like they, a couple of production things have come through here to do TV shows about it, and they've always asked me to do an interview, and I always say no. It's like I don't need a 15 minutes of fame. I know what I saw. Like I don't need to talk about it. Like it's like I mean he displays the picture publicly in his store. But yeah, I mean he's a fisher. He's a local fisherman. He owns a bait and tackle store. Like he knows what's in that lake, and he saw something that he didn't know was in that lake and didn't know why it was there, and managed to snap probably the holy grail of this is like the Sandra Mancy of Pepin photos. Not anywhere as detailed as a Sandra Mancy photo, but it's probably the best photographic evidence that's come out of Lake Pepin.
Wow. I mean, and it's so difficult to snap a picture of anything in the water, really, even known creatures. And I think that's what people don't really get. There was that old thing that people used to say in cryptozoology, isn't it? If you ever seen a car crash, you think you could take a picture of one happening if you just had your camera in your hand and you whipped it up straight. Things happen fast, and we're not always prepared to do that, or even in the right spot to get it. And I think for those people who do see something unusual, what they normally find when they report it as well, if it goes live or national or international, is that you don't get any special reward for that, really. Even more or less, you get a lot of harassment, and then you might have to wear that experience locally, as well, with people that and come into your business and who you work with if you work somewhere else. So that's that's a big, I think that's a big thing to take on. I generally have always offered people anonymity if they give me a sighting. Just said, generally, I'll keep you anonymous unless you say otherwise, and then we'll go into it. Obviously, you can't do that when you're filming them, but well, unless they're blacked out, I guess, which isn't really too interesting to watch on a TV screen, is it? But yeah, I mean, look, I think Lake Monsters for me is always the one. Lake Pepin sounds exciting because that's all sightings are more or less antagonistic sightings, antagonistic witnesses, because nobody could be expected to be seeing a lake monster there. Nobody's aware of it. I think that's great. If there other lakes within the US that aren't really well known for their monster sightings as well that you'd love to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I research everything, and lake monsters is one of my favorite. I mean, Loch Ness is kind of what got me into the field to begin with. So, yeah, and we want to do some stuff on like the Altamaha in Georgia. There was one I came across, Shirley, what they call it, in Idaho. And then I think there's one in Washington that I came across. I forget the names of it. There's just once you get out like PNW area, there's just so many. I know I want to get up to Canada and do Ogopogo at some point.
Yeah. All the
I think
pogos, Iggy Pogo, Manipogo. Let's do the whole state. I mean,
the
it's
whole pogo.
it just, and that seems to be physiologically a different looking creature, something more serpentine and sinewy and long, doesn't it? What do you think that could be a similar species, or do you think, once again, we're looking at something, the difference between a brown bear and a black bear, or is this something physiologically that's really different?
I don't know. I mean, what do they say with Ogopogo? Isn't it like it's the most cited of the lake monsters in the world? Like it just
Apparently.
like per capita, like it's like an insane number. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and you're right. That one does it. It seems to always take that serpentine. It's almost like the Lake Lagerfeld in Iceland, where it's like always described as something, snaking through the water. And
yeah, sure. That creature is all the scrimshaws. I think they used to be. That goes back to 1600 sightings of that creature. Yeah, super. I mean, Iceland, fantastic place for a lake monster sighting. But yeah, that whole edge out when you get more northern there seems to be more of these serpentine-like creatures. Same in the Lake Storzian and like the Selma from Lakes. I can't remember the one in Norway, but it's in Telemark, I think. And but it's called Selma, and they seem to be sinewy and long as well. These sort of northern latitude lake monsters like Okopogo, like the Scrimshaw. I'm wondering if is there the sort of a species difference there where the conditions dictate perhaps that it's only suitable for these types of creatures. I don't know. I mean, that's really going out on a limb there since we don't know what they are anyway. But what are your thoughts? Could there be several species of these lake monsters?
well, I'm sure there is. I mean, look at Bigfoot. I mean, it always seems to be. I mean, you look at Bigfoot globally, and it's usually described as similar, but then you kind of have those weird offshoots where it's either shorter or it's taller or it has different colored fur. It's going to be like any animal if it is a flesh and blood animal where there's different regional species variants, and evolution takes things. Evolution kind of works on things differently in different parts of the world, and so yeah, I mean, maybe these creatures, these lake monsters in more northern states kind of evolved thinner and more snake like for whatever reason, versus kind of a wider body kind of smaller sized creatures more farther south. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the nice thing about cryptozoology is it's kind of everything's kind of open to your own interpretation, and you can just kind of follow the breadcrumbs whichever way you like, and obviously try to stay away from the crazy stuff, but
yeah, and sometimes you got to jump in there to see what's going on, I think, because presentation isn't always I work in healthcare sometimes. I work in healthcare all the time, but sometimes we have patients who say that they definitely have something wrong with them. They're just bad at giving their own history, at reporting what is going on with them. they're wrapped up in emotion and they're unable to put across the very reality of what's taking place. And sometimes it seems like a hypochondria, and it's actually something very real. And I think, we can have that with sightings as well. Sometimes the person is so emotionally enraptured in what's taken place with them, or it's linked to so many other things that are going on with the individual, that it's hard to pull out the real from what has happened to them. Or it's really wrapped up in local folklore and tradition and beliefs, where some of the real animals that a culture or peoples might see have a spiritual meaning within their culture. And so the interpretation or the version of the story you get has got this whole spiritual, almost ethereal aspect to it, whereas they could have just seen a very, very clear flesh and blood creature and attributed those qualities to it. And I think that interpretation is important sometimes. Let's get on to Bigfoot, actually, since you mentioned all the different types of Bigfoot around the world. I recently did a book, sorry, I'm not trying to plug myself here, but called Hairy Humanoids. Hairy Humanoids.
I have it.
Yeah, you got it. Oh, guys, so I mean, just theoretically speaking, there could be these different types. There certainly seems to be a big physiological difference between them. Let's look at some of the types in North America, maybe starting with Sasquatch. And what do you think, if there are any different types, what could they be, or what characterization could they have? Paddy, for example, skunk ape, or wood boogers, and things like that. Are we looking at one creature or several different types?
It's definitely not one creature. I mean, this is what the hell?
You're still there. You're okay.
Sorry, I'm getting some weird static.
Oh,
might be on my end.
Yeah, it's not here.
Hold on. Since
How's that? Kind of sound a bit muffled now, actually.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're all good.
All right. Yeah, I have this microphone, and for some reason it's been being weird for me lately. Okay.
Okay.
Back what I was saying. Okay, yeah. Bigfoot. Yeah, I think it's Bigfoot in the United States. It's an interesting one. Yeah, it's definitely no way in one creature. Like, it's not just Bigfoot. Like, that's it. And this thing just travels the country and gets seen by everybody. Like this has to be a population.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, one species or varying types.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, and I'm not I always say I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I research everything. Bigfoot. You can't not look at Bigfoot. But I feel like from what I've come across is all the ones in the United States are very similar to the, obviously you kind of have your regional variants and different traits and personalities based on, environment. Obviously the, skunk ape is kind of adapted to that swampy, more hot and humid environment, whereas, the ones up north and like PNW and kind of up in like the East Coast area are going to be more tailored to colder weather and whatnot. But nothing that I've come across really like stands out as like any sort of like a subspecies or any other kind of strange difference. So, I've always kind of categorized everything as kind of like the North American Bigfoot. And then you have your region, then you have your kind of relatives globally that are either almost identical or they're very much different. Yeah, I mean, I personally, I definitely feel like it's kind of what we kind of have in the United States is all within like the same family almost, if you want to put it that way.
And do you think that is directly related to other types around the world as well? Would that particular species could be perhaps emulated again in Australia with the Yowie or the Yeren in China? Or do you think they might be looking at something quite different? So, for example, the Almasti or the European woodwoes of history would seem to be more wild man-like Neanderthal-like in a way, anyway. At least in its description and its height and its build, and even the footprints, alleged footprints, seem to be that way. So, do you think there obviously don't seem to be any types like that in the United States, any wildman types? But do you think there are other Bigfoot types like the Sasquatch around the rest of the world? And if so, which are they? The Yeren, the Yowie?
I feel like Yeren and Yowie are similar to kind of what you see here in the States. But then you obviously get into like the orang pendek, which is always described as being shorter. You know, very, you know, almost 4 to 5 feet is kind of like the standard height for the people that get the chance to see this creature in, you know, one of the least, you know, explored jungles in the world. And but yeah, but then like you said, like the Almasti, where it is almost described more, you know, human-like, and you know, could be that surviving subspecies of human versus a completely you know, unique creature. And then where was the one? Somewhere in Southeast Asia, I feel like they had one where it was almost more wild man-esque, where it.
Oh yeah.
I remember Destination Truth did something on it.
Did they? Not the rock apes, because that seems more
That's in Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah. I think I know what you're talking about now, and it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh, we won't keep people waiting. If we find it, you can message me, and I'll put it in the description later,
Okay.
so we can get back to that. Yeah, I mean, there definitely seems to be a few types around, and the little ones too. Like they talk about the Janjadi in Australia, seem to be sort of like an orang pendek, but more fierce. You know, they have this reputation, don't they, of being, or the Aboriginals say that they're meat eaters, the little guys, and the big ones are more gentle. Actually, I've heard plenty of aggressive Yowie encounters over the time. It's just interesting to me, and I can't. It's hard to fathom how could these things have escaped our discovery, in the sense of, you know, we've discovered not all but most other animals, large animals anyway. How is it that they're keeping out of our, or keeping off our radar? How are they doing this?
That's
If they're
that's
an
the
actual
$1 billion question.
What are your thoughts on that? What could be the reasons that we can't find them?
Well, you see, they exist in a parallel plane that's beyond our understanding. No, I'm just kidding.
You had me worried there for a second.
Yeah,
Nash.
no,
Really
I'm not gonna get on the woo stuff. That's one of the things that I feel like intrigues me the most about the Bigfoot stuff, is it's how have they managed. I mean, obviously you always seem to hear about them in like the most remote of areas, but like, you know, there's, at least here in the United States, like there's not much land that has not been seen. You know, pretty much everything within the states at least has been touched in some form by man. So either they're just really, really good at camouflaging themselves, or, I mean, you kind of get, obviously the modern day hikers are a lot more oblivious to things around them, and it's more of a flex to be out in nature than it actually is to be out there enjoying anything. So I mean, it's possible that, you know, people have walked right past them and never even thought to think, you know, that they were out, you know. But then again, you get into some of these national parks. Like I was just out in Washington in Olympic National Park. I mean, you take these trails out there and they're just dirt paths, and it's just like impenetrable rainforest on both sides of you. You know, these things know how to move through and know, okay, if I cross here, there's possibility that I'm going to be seen. Okay, I'm going to avoid that. You know.
Are there bears in that national park?
I think there is.
Washington, probably, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Did you see any bears?
I did not. But then again, you have to look at, you know, the moose in the wild they're
Mm.
not extinct by any, they're not
Mm.
endangered by any means, but it's very hard to see a moose, and these things,
And they're
that's a
huge.
big animal.
Yeah. Terrified of
So,
moose. Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously some places are different than others. It's going to be probably more likely that you're going to potentially run into something versus other areas, but that's just it's anywhere. So yeah, I mean that's that right there. I mean, if it's like almost impossible to see known animals, think of how hard it is to see things that
I
you haven't
always
quite.
think that. Yeah. And remember as well, you're describing that you're on the trail. You're not like jetting off into the forest. Nobody's doing that. Saying, well, you know what? I'm just going to go left here and walk off into this impenetrable forest. I'm sure it'd be cool. I'm sure I'll find my way out. I'll get it up. Nobody does that really anyway, because unless you're like an expert sort of tracker and woodsman and able to find your way through those great skills those guys have developed. But even hunters, they stay on a track, on a path, don't they? They don't just jet off into the forest. And I always ask people, so what's in that bit then? The bit we never go in because we'll get lost and probably die. What's there? And nobody knows. I always tell
Yeah,
the silly story of.
I like to, if I can, like if it's, like when I was out in Olympic National Park, like there's no way I could have just casually walked off the path. Like there's no way.
Yeah.
Like it was so thick, it was so treacherous.
Nobody's finding you. Yeah.
No, that's what I mean. Like I was walking through and I'm like, who in their right mind was like, well, let's put a trail here? Like, how did you end up here? Because I can't make it 10 feet off the trail that way. How did you end up here to where it's like, yeah, let's just put a path here? So, obviously in some areas, like I was in like the Black Hills of South Dakota this back in July. That's a little bit different because it's not as thick. Like you can walk off and you can see where people have, there's the remnants of kind of just, made trails by the public versus the made trails by the park. And I like to, I always say like the road not traveled, whatever. And that's when you're gonna find stuff. But yeah, no one's doing that. No one, because it's just that it's hardwired in our brain, that safety. Like I have to, this is the path.
Yeah.
That's unknown. That's uncertainty.
Yeah.
So,
We all know it. And that's what sort of, in my mind, gives me the space for something to be undisturbed. Because how often are we jetting off from that path and disturbing whatever's in there, bears or cougars or moose or something else? We're not doing it. It's the same even here in the UK, which has very few large forested areas, but there's plenty of places we could just wander off and get lost forever. And we don't do that. And yet we're completely certain that we know what's there. And it's like, well, Google Maps is not the same as exploring an area, and there could be so much in a small area we don't even know about. And I was just mentioning earlier that I had this big surprise being from the UK when I first landed in Atlanta. I think I was connecting there for some reason, and I could just see forest stretching out as far as the eye could see as I landed. I said something, what forest is that? And they're like, oh, I don't think that has a name. It's just a bit of wood. And I was like, no, it's not. It's huge. Like something could, we're just talking. And in North America, you've got that. You've got, in USA especially, these just massive tracts of land that actually people aren't really in. They're not really walking in. There's a probability. It doesn't make it a fact, but there's a possibility of habitation, a habitat
100%.
that's undisturbed. Yeah. What about do you look into things like mystery flying creatures like the pterosaur sightings in the UK or in the US, or Mothman type creatures? Do you look into any of that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an active, I go to, I do the Van Meter Visitor Festival in Iowa every year, and that's, the alleged pterosaur-esque creature, and everyone looked into Mothman. If you get into this field, like that's, you're gonna eventually kind of dive into that a bit, and then Jersey Devil, and I've been doing a lot into like Kangamato research in like Zambia, and then Rogan stuff in Papua New Guinea, and yeah, I mean you can't not look into this stuff because it's just so fascinating that it's like, okay, this is now we're talking the sky. Like,
Yeah.
not many places to hide in the freaking sky, but people are claiming to see these large, bat pterodactyl looking creatures. All right, let's look into this, and then obviously you get, the Native American stories all across the US, describe the Thunderbird, in some fashion, and it's you can't ignore it.
Oh, that's like a widespread thing in
Oh yeah,
First Nations culture. Oh,
yeah.
okay, that's interesting.
Because I know like David Weatherly talked about it in his book for Arizona,
Love his books. Yeah.
but then within like you talk to like Ken Gerhard, and he
Mm.
he does Thunderbird research in like Pennsylvania
Mm.
and Texas, and I always come across reports in like Illinois and Indiana, and yeah, it's a widespread. That's almost like a common native
Are the
story.
sightings mainly nocturnal sightings, or or are they just sort of any time of the day, night or day? They're sort of a mixed bag.
I've seen day and night.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, especially with those ones in Umboy Island in Papua New Guinea, where they described
The light.
their chests lighting up, like
Yeah.
some sort of bioluminescence, and made me think momentarily, what if sort of our ancient forebears have perceived that as fire, and would these have been fire-breathing dragons almost, or it looked like these serpents or these dragons that were aflame in some way? And it also seemed like a fantastic adaptation for fishing at night. They normally
Yeah.
swoop over the water, don't they? That's amazing. Have you heard of any bioluminescent sightings in the US?
Yeah, I mean, the Van Meter Visitor is one where it was described as emitting light out of its head,
Wow.
and that was kind of what anybody that came across it, as soon as it did that, they like blacked out and woke up
Oh,
hours
wow.
later and didn't remember, or I shouldn't say didn't remember, but they just, that was
Mm,
kind of its defense mechanism, was this light emitting out of its head. And
that's interesting.
yeah, I mean, obviously with Mothman too, you always hear the eyes glow red,
Mm,
almost like they're actually physically glowing. It's not any sort of eye shine or anything like that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff's definitely there. The Ropin one definitely interests me the most, because that's the
Mm,
one that seems most widespread and even documented. As
mm,
I mean, I know years ago. I don't know. I haven't really looked into the laws and stuff now, but I know for a while it was illegal to fly at night in Papua New Guinea. Like, no planes flew at night
oh.
over Papua New Guinea, but you were still getting these people. You were still getting documented
Mm,
sightings of a light flying through the sky. Could be UFO, could be this creature,
mm.
but it's definitely not a known aircraft, because that shouldn't be.
I mean, and also it's like super rural. I mean, it's a proper rural paradise. That those whole islands. It's very little settlement there, and it's not really built up. So I would imagine that you'd be seeing too many sort of house lights up on the hill, or anything like that either. I did speak to a few people from the island before, I think, and a few people have been there, and yeah, they were pretty much convinced. I think they had a few daytime sightings as well
Mm-hmm.
of creatures that just appeared to be like pterosaurs. There's been a few things like that in the UK over the years that are kind of hard to quantify, really. But yeah, the sightings seem to match that same corporative standard. That people have seen something that looked like a big leathery winged bird, sometimes with a crest on its head, flying about the place. And can you do about that other than accept it at face value? That's what they said
Yeah.
they saw. That's what they said they saw. Coming back to Bigfoot again, actually, some of the Yowie sightings in Australia appear to have bioluminescent eyes. They have eyes that emit their own light. Do you have reports like that in the US as well?
Not that I've seen, but I'm sure they're
Hmm.
there.
I haven't heard of
Um,
them either. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't really. I mean, I've been doing Yaoi research for quite a while, and I guess I've never even heard of, at least never. I've never personally come across anything
Hmm.
describing, any sort of glow. That's interesting, though.
Yeah, almost self-illuminating eyes. That it was I think the researchers, and I got these. I can't name the exact incidents, but there's been several, which I picked up from the Australian Yowie research site. I think also Tony Healy, who I interviewed recently, mentions it once or twice in his book Yowie with Paul Cropper. This bioluminescence, and then suddenly we're in this weird area where possible primate of some kind is producing bioluminescence, which is, complicates the situation slightly. But what are you going to do about that? Before we wrap up, I think it'd be really nice to just talk about sort of upcoming expeditions. What's on your wish list, and what do you hope to get done next year?
Yes, I mean, we're gonna, we've been kind of sitting at an idle for the last almost 2 years. We kind of wrapped up our newest episodes in October of 2020, and we had originally planned at getting back out there the summer of 21, and then my fiance got pregnant, and I was like, okay, I got it. I gotta be here for her and whatever. So then, yeah, I think we are, we're hoping to have a very productive, semi-busy year doing different projects, and I shouldn't say different projects, but different things with Chasing Legends. And I think there's like 6 episodes, 6 subjects that we're kicking around and shooting stuff on, and then there is a Tasmanian tiger dream project that we're kind of quietly developing. That I'm really, if I can pull it off the way I want to, it would be pretty interesting. I mean, that's like my, when it comes to cryptids, like for some reason I've always like said Tassie tiger is my favorite, even though it's my favorite non-cryptid cryptid. So that would be probably like my dream expedition. I mean, and then there's we have a couple of little things that are kind of very early kind of planning, development, whatever. But yeah, we've got hopefully 6 that will be producing, and they'll be, within the US. I think there might be 1 where we go internationally, but yeah, I mean, we got a new team put together, and kind of a new format that we're gonna, we pretty locked in on the format now, where everything is gonna actually look like a show and not, the 4 episodes we released in 21. They were supposed to be kind of a whole season, but all the episodes kind of felt standalone. They all kind of existed on their own, and it just looked kind of very, varyingly different. And so we've kind of, rather than kind of chalking those up as a season 1, we've kind of just, been labeling them as just standalone episodes. And then what we will be moving forward with and what you will be seeing in the future will be like proper seasons. And
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be, we've really allowed this kind of project to evolve. And I feel like it's at a really good place where we have, the right people in the right roles. And it will be co-hosted by my cousin, and she's been with the project since day 1, and her and I have been researching cryptids since we were kids. So it's it's her and I got a really good dynamic. So kind of have different approaches and different theories on certain things. So it's going to be nice to kind of get her more on the forefront and let her kind of share her thoughts and kind of see what directions we can take. And
that it sounds absolutely amazing. I look forward to it. I love what I've seen of the previous 4 as well, and the subjects and the name Chasing Legends is a great name. I just like the way that sits. It stays with you. Get the merch out. That's important. We'll put links to that stuff in the description later as well. Nash, thank you so much for checking in today, and for having such a great catch up, and let me pick your brains about all these different cryptids and ideas. For anybody watching, I'll put a full description where you can find Nash at the end of the show, and how you can get involved in Chasing Legends. Nash, thanks for stopping by.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.